This is an exercise that I'd like you to do before doing assignment 2. You need a piece of paper that's small. I'm going to use a sheet from this little sketchbook that came along with my kit of drawing supplies. You can use laser printer paper, or even, inkjet printer paper, or even half a sheet of that would be fine. You can use something that comes out of a sketchbook. Kind of anything would be fine as long as it's blank, it's more or less white colored, and very importantly, it's absolutely rectangular. You don't want to just tear a chunk of paper off of something. You want to have a nice even rectangle that you can actually, as I've already done here, fold, match the corners, so that what you do is essentially turn this one drawing sheet into two. Okay, so we're going to think about this as if there are two separate sheets, two separate pages, two separate drawings on this one little paper. But even this size, it doesn't even have to be this big, could be a little bigger, doesn't really matter. Again, this is an exercise. It won't take terribly long, and probably not even going to keep the drawing. So we don't need to be that fussy about the materials, but you do want to have a clear rectangular shape. And you can use any kind of pencil that makes a dark mark. I'm actually just using a HB number 2 pencil, the kind that has an eraser on the end for this. All right, now what you want to do is take this, fold it in half, and then fold 1/2 underneath. So you're really just seeing the one sheet, the half a page, right? Notice that the orientation of these two, what I'm now calling 2 pages, is vertical, meaning that they're taller than they are wide. If I were to switch them around like this, they would be wider than they are tall. This is something that you need to be conscious of. What is the orientation of your piece of paper? Now, if you're going to draw on one side of this, and then you're going to draw on the other side. If you are left-handed, you'll probably want to start on the right-hand side, so that when you're drawing this, you're not having to drag your hand over the paper that's already been drawn on. And if you're right-handed, it's the other way. So I'm right-handed, so I'm going to fold it over like this. So I'll draw first on the left side and then second on this side. But I'm gonna hide the left side for now, so it's clearer that we're looking at just one drawing, one little sheet. Now, what do we want to do? We want to draw only with line now. We're just using nice, dark, sharp lines. We're not filling in areas. We're not grading tones. We're not making decorative patterns, just lines. So, and you want to go all the way to the corners of the paper. And in fact, if you have something you can draw on, you can even go a little beyond so that the lines actually intersect the edges of the sheet. So let me just do this for example. Again, yours could look a very different way. I'm going to make some sort of geometric shapes here. Maybe some circular shapes. Maybe some of them are not quite on the paper. Maybe sort of jigsaw shape. Maybe a wavy line. Maybe something else over here that's geometric. Okay, this is good enough. What you want to do is draw enough lines that you feel as if you have cut. You're not literally cutting now, but metaphorically speaking, you have cut the rectangle into smaller, recognizable shapes or pieces. Think about these as if you were thinking about a jigsaw puzzle. So for example, you can see up here in the corner, we've got a shape that looks a little like an arrow if you think about it, including the corner of the page as a part of the shape. And this is very important that you're thinking about how the shapes that are formed on a page actually do include the edge of the page as parts of those shapes. So if you look at this and you think, well, some of these are kind of big and difficult to understand shapes, then maybe you want to add some more, like this here. This big shape here is a little tough to follow, so maybe I'll just put another couple of lines in here to try and chop these into somewhat smaller sizes. Okay, so let's say that's it. That's our pattern. Yours can look very, very different from this, but what you want to do is have only lines and carve up the rectangle into different smaller shapes. Now, you're going to use the other side. If you're watching this video, what I actually recommend you do now is pause the video and go ahead and make that drawing. And then when you are done with the drawing, come back and resume the video and we'll do part 2. So make this drawing on one half of your sheet now. And when you've completed it, come back. Okay, I'm assuming that you have drawn your design and you are back. Now, unfold the paper so you have, if you're right-handed, it's probably going to be this way. If you're left-handed, it's going to be that way. Have the blank side, which is exactly the same shape, exactly the same proportion as the part you drew on. And what you're going to do now is copy it as exactly as possible. So how do you do that? First of all, be clear what I'm asking you to do. I'm not asking for some kind of mirror image, right? I am asking you to copy it so that we have this. I talked about this as a sort of arrow shape in the upper right corner of this drawing over here. So it should be on the upper right-hand corner of this drawing over here. Now, the one thing I don't want you to do is trace, to like fold this over and, oh, I can make a perfect copy by tracing, because then you're not really doing the exercise. I want you to look and copy. However, you can do some other things if they're helpful. You can, for example, think, okay, well, what is about halfway across here? Maybe make a little mark, about the halfway point on this drawing, or maybe roughly the halfway point up the page, right? So that we've got these sort of reference points. So we'll say, oh, okay, how far across here from the corner does this intersect the page, right? And you can even take your finger and kind of measure and say, oh, okay, it seems to be, about here, right? What angle is this? Now, what you have to pay attention to very carefully in this exercise are, what are the angles of the edges and the shapes of the edges in relationship to the rectangle, the shape of the page? So the vertical edge of the page is vertical. The horizontal edge of the page represents horizontal. So if it's more or less parallel to the vertical, then you can put that parallel. If it's a kind of halfway between vertical and horizontal, then you want to capture that angle. So it's going to be something like this. Now, you're not going to be absolutely 100% perfect, but you want to see, okay, where is it? Where does it intersect? What angle is it? How far across the page does it go? How far down the page does it go? And you really want to look carefully and try, and even more than I'm doing in this demonstration, because I'm speeding up a bit to try and get the instructions across, but you don't need to do that. To really look for every little lump and bump and bend and funny shape that happens in that drawing. So again, you can come over here, you can say, okay, here's the corner of the page, here's the point where this wavy line intersects it, that's the corner of the page, you know, maybe something like this. What is that angle? How far down the page when it starts to make its curves? And then we see something over here that's about this far down. It's not parallel to the horizontal. It's a little bit pointing down. You kind of look how far does that point land from this one. Try and find those angles. So this would take a while, but really try and complete an exact copy of this. Same size, same page in the place in the paper, just as exact as you can. All of the angles, all of the lumps and bumps and curves on here. And then once you've done that, you feel like you've got a satisfactorily accurate copy, you know, really check your copy. Notice, did I suddenly, you know, look at like this, how wide is this? Did I change something over here where suddenly that becomes much wider shape or much smaller shape? You want to really start to sensitize yourself to the shapes of these edges and the relationships between them, including the shapes of what I was calling jigsaw puzzle pieces, the shapes that are created between the edges.